Okay. This is an interview at Days Inn, Hicksville, New York, 15th of July, 2003, approximately 9 a.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you tell me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Robert Grinning, June 15th, 1922.
And where were you born, please?
Newfoundland.
Okay.
I'm 81, but I've been in the United States 80 years.
Okay.
Okay.
What was your educational background prior to entering the military service?
I graduated high school, and that's it.
Were you enlisted or did you get drafted?
In 1940, I volunteered for the Navy. And the reason I went in the Navy at that time was that the United States was going to start drafting. And in drafting, they can put you any place they want. And I chose the Navy.
Okay. Do you know why you chose the Navy?
Well, it seems that the background from my family were all fishermen. And evidently I liked the water unconsciously, and I picked the Navy.
Okay. Now, where did you go for your basic training?
Newport. In the day I enlisted, August 15th, 1940, I was sent to Newport for 2 months. And
was that Newport, Rhode Island?
Newport, Rhode Island, right. After a couple of months at Newport, I and other guys were sent to the West Coast. I picked up the destroyer. The destroyer that I picked up was built in 1936. I went aboard in 1940.
What was the destroyer?
The destroyer was commissioned in 1936, and it was a Porter-class destroyer, the USS Balch, B-A-L-C-H, 363.
Okay.
And the home port for the destroyer that I was on was Pearl. I was put on the deck force as a sailor, seaman, and that was it.
Okay, well, where were you when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor?
Well, for a year and a half, while I was aboard, the whole fleet would go out on maneuvers, and with the battleships, the oilers and the cruisers, we'd participate in smoke screening, depth charging, shooting at targets, off and on, for a year and a half. The 10 days before the attack on Pearl, about 25 ships left Pearl with 2 aircraft carriers, the Lexington and the Enterprise. The Lexington, with about 8 destroyers, 4 cruisers, went to Midway, and the Enterprise, with the same amount of ships, went to Wake Island and dropped off planes for the Marines that were stationed on Wake. After dropping off the planes, we headed back to Pearl, and the we got word that Pearl was being attacked, and we thought that it was another maneuver, and actually it was the real thing. We were due to get back into Pearl December 6th. We didn't make it until December 8th, and of course all us guys saw the destruction. It was unexplainable, the damage that we saw. And the first ship that we had seen as we entered Pearl was the Nevada, the battleship Nevada. And we naturally saw these other ships, the bombing and the fires only happened about a day before.
So some of the ships were still burning?
Yeah, naturally, yeah. Yes. We passed the Battleship Row, where the Arizona, the California, Tennessee, and it was, as I said, it was unexplainable at that time.
Did you help in any of the firefighting or relief
no.
effort or anything at all?
But that night, it was a scary night. The explosions and the fires continued raging, and I had shore patrol or guard duty on the fantail of the destroyer, and I, with other guys, of course, I almost fell asleep, and an officer in charge at that time was going to shoot me if he caught me asleep, because there was a rumor that Japanese were on the island. Well, for 2 or 3 months, we'd go out with part of the fleet that was at Pearl and bombard or different islands. I stayed with the Balch 3 months after the start of the attack, and was transferred to a battleship, the USS Massachusetts.
That must have been quite a difference.
Well, it was. I liked all 3 ships that I was on. It didn't make any difference how small or how large the ship was, whether it was a destroyer or an aircraft carrier. Mm-hmm. But I spent 3 years on the battleship.
What were your duties on the Massachusetts?
Well, my duties started as far as the my working life in the Navy started with the Balch. I was a rangefinder operator on the Balch, and when I got transferred, they put me into the fire control division aboard the Massachusetts. I was in the main battery, in a 16-inch battery. Up in the director for the 16-inch.
Well, did you wear any kind of ear protection when were you inside the turret at all?
No, I wasn't in the turret. I was up in the director, 100
okay.
feet off the main deck, aboard the Massachusetts.
What did you do as a rangefinder operator? How did this work?
I wasn't a rangefinder operator on the Mass. I was a rangefinder operator on the destroyer, and of course we would have to say the rangefinder was used to find the distance or estimate the distance from the ship to the target, and I was in the director on the destroyer too. My first job was the director on the destroyer, and when I got transferred, as I said, they put me in the fire control division, and I was in the director. But on the battleship, I wasn't a rangefinder operator. I was a trainer directing the operation of the director towards the target or whatever.
Okay. Could you describe your service on the Massachusetts? Were you involved in some naval actions and so on?
Well, our first engagement for the Massachusetts, it was commissioned in May 12, 1942. The first action that the Massachusetts was in was Casablanca. That was November 8th, 1942. I don't know how many ships were involved in the Casablanca attack, but when I got up one morning on the approach to North Africa, the amount of ships that I saw was enormous. The tankers, oilers, transports, and of course destroyers, and a few battleships, like aircraft carriers. The Ranger, at the time that the war started, December 7th, there was only 5 aircraft carriers in service. The Ranger, the Saratoga, the Yorktown, the Lexington, and the Enterprise. By this time, I was a pointer in the 16-inch director, and I fired some salvos at the Jean Bart, the French battleship.
Did you score hits on it?
Well, I actually saw, when I had fire control of the 16-inch guns, I saw my sight was on the destroyer that was coming out of the harbor, and I saw the shells that I had just fired hit, straddle, some of the shells straddled the destroyer, some hit the destroyer, and I felt that I didn't stay on the target too long. I was compelled to change targets. But what a feeling it was to know that I had fired the 16-inch guns automatically towards the ship, French ship, the Vichy French. The French that sided with the Germans at that time. We didn't stick around too long. The bombardment of Casablanca started about 7 o'clock in the morning and continued until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was, we got hit 3 times. One of the shells went through the port side of turret 1, and the second shell exploded just before it got to the deck on the starboard side near one of the 5-inch guns, and one shot went through the American flag, and that made us mad, so we sank about 5 of their ships. The rest of the engagements were bombardments of different Japanese islands, Marshall and Gilbert.
Oh, so you went from North Africa to the Pacific theater then.
Right. Well, North Africa was supposed to be our shakedown cruise. The normal procedure was to send a ship down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to drill or practice speed runs, firing at targets or whatever. But we didn't do that. We went to Casablanca.
Where was you said you had some damage on the ship from these 3 hits. How was that repaired? Was it done there, or did they?
Fortunately, nobody got a scratch. The 8-inch shell that went through the deck, nobody was in the compartment at that time, and the only damage it did was break steam lines and electric lines and whatever. But no, as I said, nobody got hurt.
So they had steam fitters and electricians on board that
Well,
were able to repair
There
it.
was 2,300 men aboard, and of course it was like a major city that you took care of everything that was possible to damage or whatever.
Right.
Now, how did you get to the Pacific?
We went down the East Coast and passed through the Bermuda Triangle of North Carolina, and we were involved in quite a storm, and it damaged a lot of equipment. It shorted or grounded out electrical equipment to the guns, certain guns. We went through the canal, and first time through the canal, and we ended up in Ifadi, New Hebrides. And
Now, did you ever experience any kamikaze attacks at all?
well, when we got to where Marshall and Gilbert, I think, was our first main port, and kamikazes came towards the end of the war, or about a year before the war ended. But the first engagement that I can remember is 5 or 6 battleships lined up, and one right after another, and we were going to six battle wagons. 6 times 9 is 54 shells fired at the same time on the island. I forget which island it was. The first shot, as I said, was altogether fired the first shot. 54 tons of shells. Each battleship had a certain target on the on this island, and after the first round of shelling, the ships fired at random at different targets aboard this this Japanese-held island.
Was this in preparation for a landing?
Well,
Or
that
just- you were
might
just-
have been. Well, all the bombardments that the battleship was involved in, and other ships, we didn't go to sea by ourselves. We went with the rest of the fleet. The Massachusetts is credited with 35 engagements, air attacks, bombardments, and that's it.
Were you ever involved in any the naval battles at all? Like at Leyte, or
No.
you're just bombardments of islands? So on?
Right.
Okay.
I forget the task force or the fleet that we operated with. Was with Halsey, and the Enterprise went with us to almost all the engagements, the 35 engagements.
Were you off Okinawa at all?
Yes. I have a diary. I kept a diary, and I meant to bring it as a reference, but I forgot it.
No, that's okay.
Were you there for one of the big typhoons?
Yes, we were there for the major typhoon at that time in 1944.
What was that like?
It was unbelievable to see these ships. At times you were down in the the gully of the waves. The waves were so high, and the outcome was that 3 ships, destroyers, were lost due to the storm. But we couldn't go out on the deck. Those guys that were out on the deck were tied naturally, so they wouldn't go overboard. I guess a couple of guys got washed overboard. We didn't lose a man on the Massachusetts, but they were, due to the line that was tied to them, they were rescued.
When did you leave the Massachusetts?
In 45, I was transferred to the heavy cruiser, USS Fall River, CA-131, a month before the war ended. And the shakedown cruise for the Fall River was Guantanamo Bay. We finally got to Guantanamo Bay. That sailing down the East Coast when the war ended was a sight to see. The lights were, every town on the coast was lighted. And that was August 15th, 1945, I think. And I was in the main battery for the on the Fall River, and the director, the 8-inch director, and the Fall River was a flagship for the atomic bomb that was dropped at Bikini. I wasn't involved in the actual dropping of the bomb because I was a short timer, and they didn't want short timers to be involved in the atomic bomb.
Do you remember where you were in your reaction to the death of President Roosevelt at all? How about your reaction to the dropping of the atomic bombs on Japan?
Well, we heard it. President Truman ordered the dropping of the bombs, and we heard that it was devastating.
Did you have a personal reaction to that at all, or?
Well, it saved quite a few members of the armed forces from continuing the war. It had a happening that ended the war.
Now, when were you discharged?
August 14th, 1946.
And where was your point of discharge?
Actually, Long Beach, Long Island. I was Master at Arms for quite a while. I still had time to serve due to my contract with the government. And I would wake these guys up that were due for discharge at certain dates, days. shall I continue?
Sure.
Yes.
No. What I was getting at, to this day, I still serve aboard the Massachusetts as a volunteer. It's 250 miles or 450 miles round trip from my home to Fall River, Massachusetts, where the Massachusetts is as a tourist attraction.
So you still drive there and
Right,
serve.
I
How
drive-
often do you go there?
Almost every month,
Wow.
except July and August. I know about 70 other guys volunteer their time on the weekend to either work on the Massachusetts, which is my own ship. The Fall River isn't complete, a complete ship. It's the bow of the Fall River. And the Kennedy represents my own destroyer. They couldn't save all the destroyers, so the Kennedy is a national museum for destroyermen. And I and other guys have volunteered to, about 20 years ago, to restore the Kennedy. One interesting point, whenever I go up there, which is once a month, I talk with other guys, talk to 500 Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts on a Friday evening, and they go home Saturday morning, and another 500 Scouts come aboard, and we get up in front of the Scouts, and they throw questions at us, what we did during the war, how the ship handles in rough weather, how far the shells were fired, or how much the shells weighed, or the type of questions.
When you left service, did you make use of the GI Bill?
Well, yes, I did. I thought about taking being a radio operator or a ham operator, and I didn't finish the course. I went to work for Consolidated Edison. I put 38 years with Con Edison.
Did you ever use that 5220 club?
Yes, I did. For about 6 months. Then I went looking for a job. I didn't take the whole year. I got out of the service, as I said, June 14th, 1946. I went to work at Consolidated Edison of New York, January of 47.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
VFW. I also joined the American Legion, but I didn't think much. I didn't. I quit after after a year with the American Legion, and of course, as I said, I joined the VFW.
Okay. How do you think your military career, your time in the Navy, affected your life?
Well, in the Navy, being a fire controlman, it was electrical, part of the the whole part was electrical, and when I got out, as I said, I joined the Con Edison.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your interview.
Yes, thank you.
Is there anything you wanted to add? Anything else?
No. The wife and I go to 3 or 4 reunions a year.
That's another question I forgot to ask you.
And
Okay.
it's great to be able to do it. And of course, we've been doing it about 25 years, going to different states for the reunions. And the last reunion that we went to, which was the first part of June this year, it was our 58th consecutive reunion as far as the Massachusetts goes.
Have you stayed in touch with anyone that you served with?
Right. Fortunately, we started out with about 20 guys and their wives. But of course, each year it got to be less and less. Now there's only about 5 of us left as far as the Massachusetts. The Fall River reunions have been the Fall River reunion is under the umbrella of the United States Cruiser Sailors Association, and we outnumber the amount of each cruiser attendee for the reunion by almost 50% more.
Wow.
From the Fall River. The destroyer reunion, it's under the two ships, the Balch Porterfield Reunion Association, and the reason for the Porterfield joining the Balch Reunion Association is that at the time that the Porterfield was being commissioned at Pearl, the Balch sent quite a few men over on the Porterfield to man the ship.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
I hope you can do this, put these things together or whatever.